Look at this map of the Balkans. What year do you think it's from? The late 19th century? Perhaps a couple of years into the 1900s? No. This map shows the official political borders of the Balkans as they existed in 1913, only a single year before the breakout of World War I. Right on the doorstep of one of the biggest wars in history was a series of wars which fundamentally shaped the Balkans into the theater we know from our own timeline. But how many of you know what wars I'm even talking about? Let's discuss the Balkan Wars. Now, many of you will know the nature of the Ottoman Empire right before the First World War. A multi-ethnic empire tearing itself apart internally, losing lands in the Balkans from independence revolts, while Russia, Italy and Britain are slowly nibbling away at their borders. And then, in 1878, came perhaps the single largest defeat for the Ottoman Empire during their period of decline. The Russo-Turkish War, as it's known, led to the Ottoman Empire losing their influence over Serbia and the Romanian principalities, Bosnia falling into the hands of the Austrians, Bulgaria becoming an independent nation, and Montenegro expanding their borders. The only reason the Ottoman Balkans wasn't eaten up further was the intervention of the great powers, who were weary of Russian domination over the Balkans, and so wanted to keep the Ottomans intact. So, in the following decades, the Ottomans were walking on eggshells as Russia, Austria, Bulgaria, Greece, Montenegro and Serbia were all eyeing up further territorial concessions from the Ottomans. But they would only strike when the time was right. Meanwhile, the Ottomans realized that the time for further reform had come, eventually leading to the Young Turks rising to power in 1908, intending to reform the Ottoman state. But these Young Turks sought to further centralize the Ottoman state, mainly by creating a pan-Ottoman identity and government. This meant very few concessions to the Balkan Christians and the non-Turkish population of the empire, leading to unrest in mainly Macedonia and Albania. Now, Macedonia is a key area in this story, as it was an Ottoman-controlled, ethnically diverse region where all three independent Balkan powers, Bulgaria, Serbia and Greece, had interest in gaining at least part of the region. These overlapping claims by the Balkan powers had long caused distrust between these independent powers. But in 1911, under Russian guidance, the Balkan League was founded between these four independent powers, allowing them to work together officially to counter Austrian influence in the region, but in reality to expel the Turks from the Balkans. And then there were three main events which pushed the Balkan League into direct conflict with the Ottomans. The first was the Austrian annexation of Bosnia. Despite Bosnia already falling under Austrian control since 1878, it was officially still a part of the Ottoman Empire. Yet, in 1908, without consulting the other great powers, Austria decided to end the charade and annex Bosnia directly, showing further just how much the Ottomans had weakened, as there was little they could do against this Austrian action, where Austria officially annexed territory from the Ottomans. At the same time, this led to Serbia, for now, looking away from further expansion into Bosnia, as direct competition with Austria over the region was unfeasible. This led Serbia to increasingly look to the south for further expansion, into southern Serbia and Macedonia. Then there was the Agadir incident, which didn't directly involve the Ottoman Empire, but showed the delicate balance of power between the major European alliance blocs on the continent. Essentially, the crisis was an incident between Germany, who wanted Moroccan independence to secure future German interests there, and France, who sought to consolidate their control over the nation. The resulting compromise was France gaining Morocco and Germany gaining lands in Cameroon. This compromise showed very clearly that the two major power blocs were, for now, unwilling to go into direct conflict with each other, giving way for a third faction, the Balkan League, to stir up trouble in the Balkans without either big alliance bloc escalating the incident into a world war. But perhaps most importantly for the timing of the war was the Italo-Turkish War. In 1911, Italy declared war on the Ottomans and showed once again that the Ottomans were in no position to defend themselves. With the Ottoman forces in disarray, the Ottoman navy defeated, and even the Dodecanese Islands right on the Anatolian doorstep getting occupied by Italy, the image of Ottoman weakness and incompetence was once again confirmed. Within the Ottoman-controlled territory in the Balkans, resistance flared up again, and the Young Turk government was removed from power. The time seemed ripe for the Balkan nations to act and declare war on the Ottomans. So, in 1912, the Balkan League officially formed and had a combined strength of 750,000 men, against the Ottomans who had about 350,000 troops. meaning that the Balkan nations outnumbered the Ottomans by about 2-1 in the initial engagement. In terms of numbers and position, Bulgaria carried the Balkan side, with around half of the Balkan forces being supplied by the Bulgarians. The war began with a sole declaration of war by Montenegro, with the other Balkan League members following 10 days later. The Ottomans were not at all prepared for this war, and the military details are not very interesting to tell. The Bulgarian forces overwhelmed the main Ottoman force and marched very close to the Ottoman capital of Istanbul, while sieging the major city of Edirne. In Macedonia, Serbia and Montenegro soon entered the Macedonian capital of Skopje. The Greeks marched north while the Montenegrins and Serbs entered Albania. In December, 2 months after the declaration of war, both sides began negotiating peace. In January, the Young Turks overthrew the Ottoman government again and restarted the war, leading only to further Balkan gains. The peace deal that resulted ensured that the Ottomans lost most of their Balkan territory. The European great powers did intervene and would not let the victorious powers divide Albania between themselves, but insisted that Albania be granted independence. Greece gained all of the Aegean islands, most importantly Crete, and the rest of the lands ceded by the Ottomans were to be divided between the Balkan powers of Greece, Serbia and Bulgaria, although the exact borders weren't made clear yet. And the disagreements over just how these new borders should look led the Balkan nations right back into a new war. Bulgaria felt like it deserved the bulk of the gains from the war. They provided the most soldiers, they captured the most important cities, and they essentially became the front line against the Ottomans when the Balkan territories had fallen. Added to this, the Bulgarians considered the Macedonian people part of their nationality, using this to claim most of the region. To counter these Bulgarian demands, Greece and Serbia made a mutual alliance against the Bulgarians. Soon after the peace with the Ottomans was signed, the Second Balkan War would break out by a surprise attack by the Bulgarians against the combined Greco-Serbian forces. Initially, with the benefit of surprise, the Bulgarians made some gains, but the Greco-Serbian forces retreated in a relatively orderly fashion, while the Greek reserves attacked the left flank of the Bulgarian armies. This attack made the Bulgarians panic, and they tried once more for a desperate offensive to win the war in a quick fashion, but after a few gains, the front line stalled again. It looked like the war may just become an attritional conflict between the two sides. But, with most of the Bulgarian forces on the Greco-Serbian front, some other interested powers started getting into position. Romania soon invaded Bulgaria and started pushing on the capital unopposed, while the Ottomans saw the opportunity to restore some prestige and gain some territories from Bulgaria back. With the converging of the four nations upon itself, Bulgaria threw in the towel and surrendered. These wars meant that only in August of 1913 were the borders in the Balkans established as we know them from the World War. This is less than a year before the start of the war, by the way. Serbia and Greece divided Macedonia between themselves, Serbia gained southern Serbia and Kosovo, and Romania took a little slice off of Bulgaria, while Albania became independent with a German prince on the throne. There were three main losers from this war. Austria lost a lot of influence in the Balkans with its strengthening of the Russian-aligned Balkan powers, to the detriment of the ailing Ottoman Empire. Obviously, there is also Bulgaria, who was humiliated and got a lot less land than it probably should have gained. Following this war, Ottoman power in the Balkans was also completely broken. Their government had seen another shift, leading it down the road of joining the war on Germany's side. While in the meantime, Bulgaria now sought to align themselves with the anti-Russian and Serbian powers of Austria-Hungary and Germany. So, in conclusion, these Balkan wars were massively influential for both the borders and the diplomacy of the Balkan region, only a small year before the biggest war in history up to that point would break out. It really makes one wonder how history may have been different if this war had not happened. If you are interested in that, click on the box on the screen now to watch What If the Balkan Wars Didn't Happen. And as always, thank you all for watching, leave a like and a comment to help us against the algorithm. Even just commenting hi helps the channel out massively. Consider subscribing for a new alternate history video every Sunday and more history related content on Wednesdays and Fridays. Once again, thank you for watching and goodbye.